Diane Abbott debacle, of course, that we've seen over the last couple of days. People, losing their mind over this one. Clearly what he said wasn't, particularly nice and acknowledged by the Prime Minister and others as being racist. However, they haven't given the money back. And we learned today that the Tories have received an as yet undeclared £5 million from him. Should they give it back?
It's completely up to them, I think. I mean, you might question someone's investment acumen for investing in the Conservative Party at this point in time. It's not perhaps where I would put
because
my
this
money.
is in the past. It would take
15 million. Yeah,
good old Frank's sum up to 15 million. I don't think anybody's ever donated that.
No. He would be well up the top table of donors. But in terms of what he said, I think what it basically comes down to is taste as per jokes. He's made several jokes, it would appear. I don't think he was seriously advocating for Diane Abbott to be shot. He's made some off-colour remarks. Some people might find that tasteless, but I think that, there's no sense from what I've seen that he's been serious about what he's saying. And again, you sort of comes back to the freedom of speech point. I think all this sort of being looking at things from a cancel culture lens in every incident, and everyone's got to be up with the latest sort of PC approaches to life. I don't think is the right way to approach things. The jokes were probably ill-advised, but I don't see anything in there that suggests
it's interesting because there's a correlation with our previous story in terms of freedom of speech.
Right.
I mean, quite clearly, he wasn't advocating killing anybody. The argument that goes against that is that, well, we live in a world where, MPs are quite vulnerable right now, whether it's somebody protesting outside their house or whether it's somebody turning up at their surgery with a knife, and we've seen that happen in recent times. The counter to that, however, is then, well, OK, so you shouldn't say that because it's not responsible and it could be dangerous. What is the list, then, of things you can say?
Well,
once you get into that territory...
It's a good question.
We're all gagged, aren't we?
Is the Conservative Party's biggest donor potentially a target of their extremist legislation? So again, I would go back to the point that people have got to be free to make jokes, whether we think they're good jokes or bad jokes. I knew David Amess. What happened to him was unquestionably a tragedy. I think MPs probably do need more security protection in that regard. And as I say, terrorism needs to be clamped down on very heavily. But terrorism and violence are very different to holding views that are unusual or telling bad jokes.
Yes, and one is forced to, I think, reasonably conclude that if nobody ever said anything bad about an MP, every now and again, some horrendous character is still going to want to do something awful to an MP. Yeah. So we're in that territory. Final story on Grant Shapps. His plane was hacked by Putin's forces, knocking out GPS and communications as the Defence Secretary jetted back from NATO war drills. So Russia jammed the signals of his plane. This is according to the information from RAF pilots. I mean, I'm not that surprised they might try to do that. I don't know what the aeronautical implications are of doing that. I'd imagine they're not very good, but... nonetheless, it seems Putin likes to play every now and again.
No, well, if concerned. I mean, I think there have been a few incidents that have been disputed in recent years, but very much appear to be Russia slightly flexing its muscles as if to say, we might take this further if you take it further. So we've seen that on both sides with the Ukraine conflict, but it is a reminder that we can be perilously close in a lot of cases. Let's imagine that had led to a serious incident. You're then very close to a war footing with Russia. And I think it's important to remember that is the environment we're in. And I would advocate a rapid de-escalation from that, which is what Trump is talking about increasingly in his campaign in the United States, ending the war in Ukraine, because so long as that goes on, we are at a risk within a few minutes, perhaps, of a full-on conflict with Russia, which I don't think most people want.
Because we do see this every now and again, that Russia will mobilise the jets and they'll go into... They'll just dip their toe into somebody else's airspace.
Dip into the airspace, yes, or there'll be different sort of flexing of muscles in terms of nuclear threats and these sorts of things. So I think in and of themselves they're not particularly serious, but they do pose the potential that things could escalate very quickly, and we could end up, in World War III, quite frankly.